This is Ron Klopfenstein, and you're in the hot seat on a Media Monday. Hey everybody, welcome to the hot seat on this Media Monday. I'm Ron Klopfenstein. Today we'll be talking about how people use media to celebrate the lives of people they've lost. We have author Jennifer Boulanger and Sue Francisco, the founder of Whitney's Legacy. We also have a report on the No Kings protests that were held this past weekend in Rome and Herkimer. But first, Mohawk Valley saw its first role-playing convention this past weekend, and our entertainment correspondent, Nabil Khan, was there. He's joining us now for a wrap-up. So, Nabil, how was it?
Ron, it was a great turnout. Upstate New York has never had something like this specifically geared towards role-playing games. For anybody that's not familiar, role-playing games are things like Dungeons and Dragons, pretty much anything where you're using like books
Kind
and
of
maybe
inhabiting a role.
kind of, yeah, and it's a lot of like theater of the mind stuff. You're imagining the things that are maybe being read to you. You're sometimes people use like miniatures to help as well, but it's like games without a board.
Yeah.
For lack of a better term, and you're playing a role in those games.
So you kind of like, it's kind of like as if it were sort of like the sorts of things that could happen in a video game, but you have to like imagine it in your mind, and you're creating
exactly.
it. And you kind of like the group that's playing the game together. You're kind of like sharing the experience or the shared universe, kind of.
Definitely, and I mean a lot of times there is like teamwork and group things that need to happen for the story, the game to sort of advance. If you've got one person that's making it tough for everybody else, it's not only going to make the things that are happening in the game hard, but it's going to make it less enjoyable for the actual players.
Yeah. I was surprised to find that it was the first in this area, and even for like upstate New York, you were saying, even in Syracuse, it's not too common.
I mean, there's not really anything else like this in this particular area. I know of other larger ones in like Philadelphia, Long Island, like New York City. As we get farther out. But like just something like this was not around here, and Roger, who you had on last week,
he was on the show last
he
week.
Just really, he also runs the D&D game that I'm in. He also got me into D&D during COVID.
Yeah.
So, he just really wanted something like this to offer to people locally, and with the turnout that showed up, it looks like there's an audience for it.
And how cool for him,
Yeah.
It's like he did this, and we got a lot of great response to that show too. So a lot of people were really happy for him,
And
I'm really happy.
I'm sure that definitely had an impact between that, other social media groups, like everybody.
Yeah.
If even one person showed up from each like place that was shared
Right.
and showcased, I mean that's makes up like the 200 people that showed up.
It was exciting to see like all the enthusiasm online, as this came, because it's good to have like the variety of stuff that people can do, So did you get a chance to play much yourself?
I unfortunately did not. I was there in a vending capacity and or like backup staff for Roger. I mean, we had a great group of staff, and it was fun though. Maybe next year, if I'm not alone man on the table, I'll hop in on a game. He actually at one point asked me if I could run one because somebody didn't show up, and I said I wish I could, but I'm kind of chained to this table.
You had so many things going on.
Yeah.
So what's happening with the Nintendo Switch? Any news?
The Nintendo Switch is really fun. I can tell you that.
So you have one. So
I got my hands on one.
Them now. So
yep. I got mine delivered to me the Thursday morning they came out, and it was a very.
What's your review?
Well, let me tell you this delivery story because this is probably as fun or more fun than the actual story.
It's like an unboxing video.
I was leaving my house to go substitute teach. It was 6:30 in the morning, right?
Yeah.
And delivery driver is walking up to my door and I'm like, what is going on?
That's early for delivery.
He had a Walmart cooler bag. I never order groceries delivery. I buy my own. So I'm like, what the heck is this? I didn't order anything like that. When you open it inside, Walmart decided to anybody who got the Switch that they were giving a Coke, Hot Ones flavored Pringles, and then underneath that, the Switch 2 was kind of a separate layer in the same cooler bag. I'm like, this is such a strange way to give this, but it was
but
memorable.
I bet you wish you weren't on the sub list that day. I bet you want to turn right back.
Oh, 100%. I got there and I definitely had students like asking me like where my head was at, and I said my head is at home with my Switch 2.
The Nintendo. So how is it?
It's really good, like picture quality wise. It is on par with the previous Switch.
Yeah.
It's got a better battery life, I'd say, by a couple hours. It can play any of the games you had on the original Switch, as well as its own set of games.
Yeah.
I had a version of the Switch 1 where you couldn't plug it into the TV, like it's just an on-the-go model. And I forgot that this was one like you could slide into a thing and like show up on the big screen, and that's a cool
really
feature.
Good. Yeah, I would say.
I also feel like compared to some past releases, like sometimes like these new systems will come out and nothing is available for them.
Yeah.
They did a really good job of making sure stores were stocked up. I mean, like I got that day, and like the next day I went looking for stuff for it, like case, memory card, all those things.
Yeah.
They were readily available. Like I didn't have to feel like, darn, I got to order this on Amazon and wait a week for it to show up.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think this is one of the better Nintendo releases.
Yeah.
There have definitely been issues in the past where like systems came out and people, they waited in line, couldn't get their hands on one, upset about it.
Yeah.
I haven't spoken to anybody yet that had the money and wanted one and haven't been able to find it. So,
good.
Yeah.
Good. So what are you working on for July?
July?
Yeah. What's going to be coming up? What are you going to be talking about here in July?
I don't know. Do I share that like we're going to be having a private party for Superman?
That's right. The private party for Superman.
So,
right.
So there's a Superman movie coming out.
Yeah.
July 11th.
Yes.
And we're gonna see it on July 10th.
We get to go I'm so excited. We're gonna go to like a premiere, like a red carpet event. It's like.
So do you want sneak peeks about what's gonna be there?
I absolutely do. Yes.
So we're talking. We're gonna have a giant crypto sheet cake to share with everybody who's gonna be at it. So big old, massive cake with crypto's face on it.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if anybody's seen the trailer for this new Superman movie.
I have not.
You haven't?
No.
I don't know, man. I don't know if I should tell you to go watch it or if you should go in blind and just enjoy it. But Crypto is in the trailer, and he kind of steals the show a little bit because we've had Superman movies, and they've never really like spotlighted him. And he's a big part of Superman's history.
Oh, of course, right.
So I mean, like they're doing it right this time. They're giving him some due, and I want to do the same thing.
Yeah. Well, that sounds great. So
we'll have a couple raffles at the thing. Some free ones. I got some comics that are first appearances of people that are in the movie. No Superman, obviously.
Who's playing Superman?
His name is David Cornsweet.
Mm-hmm.
I know
he's from Hollywood on Netflix.
Something?
He was in the Ryan Murphy mini. Yeah. So I know him from that.
Right. I was gonna say I don't want to say he's an unknown, but he's definitely not like on the tier
not as
of
well
like
known as most people who like are cast.
Right.
Superman.
So I mean, like this was probably gonna be what puts him on the map.
Good. Well, it's a tough role, I think, because a lot of people that get cast, it doesn't work out like you would think it would. Like Henry Cavill, I would have thought would be much bigger than he was, and I thought he was good as Superman. Actually,
most people really like him.
Yeah.
And it does sort of segue to another. So I'm doing some free raffles at the show because I always do.
Yeah.
I always try to do one like charity based one too.
Nice.
And the one I'm doing for that ties to an older Superman.
Yep.
So we're going to do a 50-50 at it for the proceeds for that are going to go towards the Dana and Christopher Reeves Foundation, which supports
really nice.
like paralysis research and prevention.
Right.
So
like having the Christopher Reeve. So have you been a Superman fan your whole life?
I haven't been a Superman fan my whole life. If I'm being honest, I have, and this sounds funny for somebody who's holding a Superman event, I've always thought he was a little bit vanilla.
Yeah, well, he is, but I mean, that's part of the appeal, I would think.
Sure, in some cases, but when you stack him up next to Batman, you got the dark brooding.
See, I'm more like a Batman guy too, so I totally I understand.
But I'm chasing that high of stuff like Henry Cavill, where you had a little bit of a darker, edgier, different Superman.
Right.
I don't think we'll get dark, edgy, but I would like different.
Yeah, I really do too, and I think it's interesting because he does have a much different tone than Batman does. But I'm sure we'll be talking about that. So in July when
when we're closer,
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Jennifer Boulanger is the author of A Song for Olaf, a memoir of sibling love at the dawn of the HIV/AIDS pandemic. It was available in bookstores on June 1st, the first day of Pride Month. So, Jennifer, welcome to the show. And why Pride Month? Why did you choose June 1st as your release date?
Well, I purposely delayed the publication of the book. It was ready earlier, and I said, let's wait and let's release it on the first day of Pride Month because I wanted it to coincide with Pride Month because it's my expression of pride in someone that I loved so much, who was gay and who was the most wonderful person that I ever met.
So in your book, you describe him as having a jubilant, breathtaking and heart-wrenching life. Can you tell us a little bit about who Olaf was and who he was to you?
Well, he was my older brother, and as my older brother, he was a mentor, somebody that I looked up to. But he was also like living kind of with a carnival or a cartoon. He was any moment going to burst into song and dance full of life and very musical, very artistic, very passionate, and just loved life. And he was also the person that got me interested in reading, got me interested in books. So I kind of feel like the book is both of our products. Yeah.
And he was somebody too that, really, he was such a significant part of your life. He was really he was your brother. He was really your best friend too.
Yes, he was. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we were. So as kids, he was often the one that was taking care of me.
Yeah.
When my parents worked, both my parents worked, so we were together all summer. We were together in the evenings. And he would always come out with something fun to do, and get me involved in something, putting on a play or playing school or whatever we were doing.
So what happened to Olaf?
So he, I guess you could say, was born at the wrong time. He came of age right at the time that, right when Stonewall happened. That was the year that he was going away to college, and
1969.
1969, and so, it was a time when the liberation was wonderful, but nobody knew what was lurking until, 1981, and that's when we started to hear the first rumblings that there was a disease out there or something was going on. He had told me that some of his friends were not, they were having these symptoms and nobody could quite figure out what was happening, but it was happening to gay men primarily. And then, so I was 26 years old, so from that point until he died, it just hung over us for most of our adult lives.
How old was he when he was diagnosed?
When he actually got the diagnosis, he was 40 or 41, and he died when he was 42. So but he didn't test right away because of the stigma, because they were afraid. You could be evicted, you could lose your job, you could, who knows what could happen to you. So people delayed getting tested.
So that would have delayed the treatment too of what?
Absolutely.
Well, what are some of the things that he had to go through? Even especially after he became sick, the way that society treated people back then who were gay, especially if they were gay, that they had outward signs of AIDS. What was his life like? He lived farther. He lived away from me. I lived in central New York. He lived in Atlanta during this time. And he was, in a community. He was among people who were his friends, and they stuck together because they had to. They had to have each other's backs. But I think most of the real emotional pain came when he lost his partner. Because that was earlier, before anybody knew exactly how it was transmitted, and people were afraid to be around him. I talk in the book about how was he ever afraid to be around him?
He was not. No, I think by the time his partner got sick, everybody knew that it was right. It was the kind of thing where it was just a matter of time. So, but his partner's parents had come supposedly to stay with them and wouldn't stay overnight, wouldn't eat any of the food. Right, the dad put on gloves that you would wear in the hospital to protect himself because he was more worried about becoming sick than he was about being.
Which, if you think about it, to consider somebody who's deathly ill, and whose partner's deathly ill, to have to on top of that, to have to deal with their parents coming to put on gloves, or his own father when he comes to visit him. What kind of an impact do you think? Can you articulate even what kind of an impact that has on people that are already sick or weakened, or to be treated, to be stigmatized?
Well, I mean, you know, you're in so much pain, you're suffering as it is, but then to have that emotional anguish on top of it, and that kind of heartbreak, you know, in a culture where you're always dealing with, will someone reject me? So now I'm rejected not only on the basis of my sexuality, but because I have a virus, and you know, so it's just doubly unfair and painful.
Yeah. What made you decide to write this book? It's been several decades since he's died, and you decided to write this book. So what was that made you decide this is the time to tell his story?
Well, I always had it there. I kind of tucked it away, and I was in the back of my mind planning to write it, I think, but I couldn't bring myself to it first because it was too raw. It was too painful for me to relive it. Plus, I had little kids, I had a job, I had to get back to my responsibilities, and I didn't have the time to do it justice, so I started working on it after I retired from my career in higher ed, and then I really got serious during COVID because I was, you know, home alone a lot of the time. You know, my grandkids weren't coming over anymore. We were quarantining.
It was a good time for projects.
It's a good time for projects.
It really was.
but it was this one day I had the TV on, and I saw the people outside the hospital with the I love you signs because they weren't allowed in, and I started thinking about all of the gay men whose partners weren't allowed in their rooms because they weren't so-called family, and how devastating that was for them. And that was a point when I was started to see, this is too familiar. And then there was all of the fake remedies that were promised to people during COVID. I was thinking about all of the crazy stuff that people were, you know, sold during the HIV pandemic to try to, you know, trick them into thinking they were going to get better. And the victimization, you know, the calling it the Wuhan flu, the way a certain party did.
So did you feel that telling his story and recapturing this moment in his history was a way to address or to speak to what was happening or just happening to us now with the pandemic? Because I noticed you put that in the title too, pandemic. You know, part of the title, but
well, it just seemed to me that, you know, we didn't learn our lessons the first time there was a pandemic. And we were repeating the same mistakes, and you know, people in denial, and people, you know, using false remedies, and people victimizing people, all doing all of the same things over again, and that we hadn't learned anything. And so I thought, well, maybe by writing this book, it would wake some people up. Unfortunately, we're not in a place where you know, our medical science is getting the kind of attention it needs right now.
Right. So I want to bring you into the conversation here. So you are the founder of Whitney's Legacy. That's a nonprofit organization that actually does what? I didn't finish my script here. What does Whitney's Legacy do?
We try to make this world a better place.
How?
Well, it boils right down to that. My daughter she was an empath from the time she was a child. Who was
your daughter? Why don't you pull your mic so that it's facing right in front of you, just like that, so you can look at me and tell me all about it.
Then you're gonna get my profile, and I don't want that.
So who was Whitney?
So she was an empath her whole life, literally from the time she was a young child.
What does that mean?
I'll give you an example. My mother was in assisted living, and my daughter would go visit her. They were best friends their whole lives. And my daughter was listening to my mother talk about, she's 7 years old, by the way. She talked about the bus driver's granddaughter who fell riding her bike and broke her arm, and the bone came out of her arm. And my 7-year-old daughter started to cry for that girl that she never knew anything about.
Wow.
So that's kind of been her in a nutshell.
Yeah.
And to stand up and take up for whoever needed help.
Mm-hmm. Sue, you can pull your chair up maybe a little bit further back like that.
Yeah, you're not coming in there too.
Yeah, just try it like that. Just go like
Okay,
this.
oh, I got it. I don't
Scoot your
like
chair
mics.
back like that, so that you.
Okay. Got it?
All right, yeah.
So, yeah, she was just always standing up for what was right, taking
Yeah.
care of anybody that needed to be taken care of.
And what happened to her?
What happened to her?
Yeah.
I forgot we already had this discussion before, but we have to tell the others, right?
Yeah.
December 12th, 2023, she passed away of an ectopic pregnancy.
Man.
So, and I, as her mother, didn't even know she was pregnant.
Wow.
She had some, issues prior, so she wasn't telling anybody. Just her and her husband knew.
What is that, an ectopic?
Ectopic pregnancy, the egg does not make it to the uterus.
To the tube.
So it's typically in the fallopian tube.
Mhm.
Once in a while it'll end up outside the uterus, but
Oh man.
typically it's in the fallopian tube, and as the egg grows, the fallopian tube is not viable. It pliable is the word I'm looking for. It's not pliable, so that's what happened at birth. And
Her death came out
basically-
without a warning.
she thought she had the stomach bug,
Yeah.
but what happened was she was bleeding internally. She didn't have the typical
Yep.
severe pain. She didn't have the typical bleeding. None of that. She just thought that she had the stomach bug. So she was throwing up violently all day long. And I have
So
talked to
someone-
enough professionals to find out that that's when, there was so much blood in her abdomen that it was squeezing.
Wow.
organs.
Yeah.
Mm.
So someone that remarkable dies, and somebody, your only child. What did you do to keep her legacy alive and to remember her? And
Well, it's
celebrate
really
her
funny
life?
because it was only a matter of maybe 6 months ago that I found out that I actually said, a friend of mine came over at 4 o'clock in the morning. I found out at 1, and I had 3 people there, and then I sent them home, and then another one came, and I actually said something to her, which I do not remember, about starting something.
Was that
and
the
then-
night that it happened?
The night it happened.
Yeah.
Literally 3 hours later. The next day, I was down in Philadelphia, and her best friend was there, and he said, "Is it too early to talk about an endowment?" And I
Oh.
said, "I've already thought about it."
Yeah.
And then I came home. I think I might have even called you before the funeral, didn't I? I don't.
I believe so, yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
It was-
Oh, yeah, no, I came to your house,
Okay,
yeah.
that's right. She came. Yeah.
yeah,
Jennifer came to the house, and
yeah.
she's my vice president.
So,
Yeah.
Sue, when we come back from the break, I'm going to ask you more about what Whitney's legacy does, about the event that you have, and we'll talk more about the book. Today we're talking to Jennifer Boulanger, author of A Song for Olaf, a memoir of sibling love at the dawn of the HIV/AIDS pandemic, and Sue Francisco, founder of Whitney's Legacy. I have the video, podcast, and the show online Tuesday at uticaphoenix.net/Media Monday, along with links to the show notes. I'm Ron Klopfenstein, and you're in the hot seat on a Media Monday. I'll have more after the break. This is Ron Klopfenstein, and you're in the hot seat on a Media Monday. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the show. Next week on the Hot Seat Media Monday, our guest will be superstar Ryan Quinn. I interviewed him when I started my column at the Clinton Record for the Rome Sentinel. He was the first person I interviewed, so it'd be cool to talk to him again and see. That was it was 7 years ago, so we're going to touch base again. We're also hoping to work out a live phone call from Brandon Dunn. Right now, he's in the war zone in the Middle East. He's going to call us with a live on-the-scene report. So, Brandon, stay safe. That's Monday, June 23rd at 5 o'clock, right here on 95.5 FM The Heat broadcast, 955theheat.com streaming, and coming soon to Twitch. So possibly next week, that Ryan Quinn show possibly might be on Twitch. So we're working on that. But today we're talking to Jennifer Boulanger. She's the author of A Song for Olaf, a memoir of sibling love at the dawn of the HIV/AIDS pandemic, and Sue Francisco, the founder of Whitney's Legacy. So Sue, as we went to the break, you were telling us a little bit about what Whitney's Legacy does. Jennifer, you're on the board of Whitney's Legacy, and there's an event coming up.
Mhm.
So what are you guys working on?
We are going to have a music fest at the Rome Art and Community Center on Saturday, June 28th. We will have vendors there and 4
Cool.
bands,
Great.
Yeah.
What kind of music?
all different genres,
Yeah?
from bluegrass to a string quartet to acoustic to a pianist. So,
And do you feel like, for both of you, this question, like, do you feel like immersing yourself like so much in this kind of work, you know, that is really to memorialize somebody? Do you think that it's it must be painful as well as like healing? I wonder, like how do you kind of deal with that? Like, where you want to do this kind of, where you're doing this work to keep her alive, but also in a way you probably want to move on at the same time. And how do you like balance that?
quite honestly, I don't ever expect to move on. And this is all I can do to honor her.
Yeah.
I will say that when I'm in front of like the home crowd,
Mm-hmm.
I get extremely emotional.
Yeah.
She was very, very well loved. Everything has been very, very successful, and I believe it's because she was so very well loved. And because we're doing great things.
Yeah.
You know, we're in kind of an ugly world.
Yeah.
So we're taking bit by bit and doing our donations. We found out that we've saved 2 women, which
How?
my goal was 1 woman.
How?
Both were through awareness.
Yeah.
And both pushed back against the person that were telling, telling them to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
And both had ectopic pregnancies.
Wow.
And one ended
Wow.
up in emergency surgery.
Wow.
Mhm.
Now, with those women, like, what would have happened if they hadn't done that?
They would have died.
They would have died.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that's an example of like where her
My goal when we
Whitney's
first
legacy-
started was I wanted to save 1 woman.
Yeah.
And now we know of 2. But we have, in less than 14 months, we have donated just under $12,000 to different organizations.
Wow. Wow.
And yeah, we're pretty proud of that.
So people
So-
coming to support like the music fest, that helps you to do that
Absolutely.
kind of work.
Yep.
What are some of the priorities that your organization has in terms of funding and who you help? Maybe Jen, you could speak to that as well.
Yeah, so Whitney was, she was just a kind soul. One of the things that she did was to bring food out to her neighbor who was homeless every day. And so we thought, well, let's start a community garden. So that's something we want to do in the future. We just barely started talking about it, but we're going to be working on that and hopefully bring that along next year. And then there's, you know, she was a spitfire. She was a very, very giving human being, but very committed to certain causes. I believe she would be really proud of this cause to empower and to help women who are in this circumstance. And I think we both feel like we're doing the kind of work that she would want. And when you lose somebody that way, it's not even it doesn't even feel like a choice. It's more like,
It's not a choice.
you know, now we have to carry the work that they would have been doing. And that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to, you know, not that we could ever replace them, but we think about what would she do in this circumstance. And then a couple of the things that the charities we just gave to the Trevor Project, we just gave to the Rome Food Bank. What else?
The Rome Rescue Mission
Rome
was
Rescue
today.
Mission.
Yeah.
Rome Rescue
We gave them
Mission.
$1,000 today.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Trevor
So-
Project, the ACLU.
ACLU.
So on the back
What
of
is your bracelet?
yeah, on the back of it's Whitney's Legacy.
Yeah.
It's our little wristband, and on the
Yeah.
back of it is WWWD.
Yeah.
In the very beginning, the first few weeks of after she passed, none of us could think straight,
Yeah.
and it became a thing. What would Whitney do?
Yeah.
And that's what drove us to do whatever. Right now, like we gave to the ACLU,
Yeah.
because I was in the salon and popped into my head that she would be devastated over these mass deportations.
Right.
Devastated. It's because that's how she was. I told you when she was 7, she cried over a broken arm.
Yeah.
You know, she would be absolutely devastated. So, you know, so the ACLU, that's the organization that seems to be having the most success.
Yeah.
There was the rescinding of Biden's guidance for emergency medical
Yeah.
for pregnant women, and women are dying in hospitals all over this country, especially the South. And I don't understand why you would rescind something like that. But in the meantime, Jennifer actually had found this particular charity. It's called Aid Access, and they send out birth control pills, abortion pills. And if it's a woman that is in need of an abortion, it's a doctor-formed organization, and they have the medical staff to back it up.
Yeah.
Plus,
Yeah.
they will send out preventative, which has a shelf life of 4 years. So obviously, right now, that's important. So right now, with what's going on in this world, it's kind of making the choices for us.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Does it help you to like deal with like the ugliness of the world and like also like the experience of overwhelming grief, to be able to just like think back like in any situation, like what would Whitney do? Like is that
All the
kind of
time.
like we kind of like
All the
rely
time.
on? Yeah,
all the time.
yeah. So Jennifer, for you, I'm wondering like now that you've written this book, is there any like maybe any elements of like any trauma still that like you feel like you've let go of now that you've written this whole book about the experience of having him as a brother and losing him as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was cathartic to write it, as
Yeah.
painful as it was to relive it. It was cathartic, and it was, you know, it was something that I couldn't let him just die. I had to get people to know him, and I thought if I could get
I
people
feel
to
like
love
I know him, you know,
they
and
wouldn't be bullies, or they would stand
Yeah.
up to bullies, and that is my hope, is that once you fall in love with him, you can't possibly be as cruel and as cruel as some of the cruelty we see around us today. So
It sounds
that's
like
my
he was
hope.
amazing.
He really was, and he was a
Yeah.
teacher. You would have loved
Yeah,
him.
I really
Yeah.
identified with it. And the
Yeah.
part where like he had to retire, he was talking about retiring at 41. That's
Yes.
what we're 41.
Yes.
And like, you know, that I really like that really spoke to me, because when I was 34, I had to retire because I had chronic fatigue, and I didn't think I'd ever work again. I didn't work for 14 years. So when I came to that part, that's one of the parts of the book where I did have to stop, and like it took me a while to get back to it, because it's like, wow, you know, and it wasn't, you know, it was, there's so many parts of his life and of your writing that you do, they're universal, and you know, it's like, I'm so glad that work is being produced that celebrates humanity, you know, with both the organization and just to celebrate these people that were against the ugliness, you know, that made it a better place. Jenna, how did you come up with all these details? Like, how did you bring back the memories and stuff?
It was a lot of it was, you know, just going through from in the beginning. I made a timeline of kind of events, sort of, you know, what were the key moments in our lives. I went through photo
I was
albums,
to say, you must have saved some postcards I saw.
you know, the program from Carnegie Hall when he sang there. And then I did a lot of research, you know, so there is, for example, there is a moment in the book where we are having a baptism party for my daughter, and my husband is holding her, and he's watching baseball while I'm doing dishes or hosting or whatever I was doing, and he screams because he's watching the Yankees and Mattingly hit a home run. And I went back and I made sure that this was the date of her baptism, and that I looked it up to make sure my memory was correct and he hit a home run. You know, I also, there's a part of there where I described the Vietnam draft that was on television. I remember it vividly, but I went back and I YouTubed it, and I made sure that it, you know, that my portrayal of it was accurate. So I did tons of research.
Those details, like, just add so much richness to the book and to like our, to the characterization of him, and it really comes through. So good job with this. And like, as someone who's gay, like I'm just like so grateful that like you told his story. So thank you for that. So,
Thank you.
you know, where can people get the book?
So the book is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble online. I will be at Barnes & Noble on June 28th, unfortunately.
Cool.
It's the same time as the
Wow.
Music Fest.
A lot of great
I want to
things
be in two
going
places
on.
at once.
Yeah.
But just for signing, and we'll be selling books there. I'll be at Jervis Library on June 24th.
To
I will-
read?
To read and also sell books. And I will be at New Hartford Library on July 12th. And New York Pride Fest on
great.
June 29th.
And I'll put links to all that stuff in our show notes. Sue, tell us one more time about Whitney's about the Music Fest.
Okay, again, Saturday, June 28th, from 12 to 5. 4 performers and vendors.
And we'll have links to that, too, information about that on the show notes. Today we were talking to Jennifer Boulanger. She's the author of A Song for Olaf, a memoir of sibling love at the dawn of the HIV/AIDS pandemic, and Sue Francisco, the founder of Whitney's Legacy. We'll have the video podcast and the video and podcast of the show online Wednesday at uticaphoenix.net/Media Monday, possibly on Tuesday. My husband Jim is pretty good with the AI, so I've proved my efficiency here. So maybe Tuesday at uticaphoenix.net/Media Monday. There'll be links to their work in the show notes. Also, a link to the feature story that I had on the No Kings protest in Rome and Herkimer. Our sound engineer is Jonathan Brooks, DJ J Easy. He was out today, so he won't be up next with the Easy Ride Home. Dave Dancy filled in. Thank you, Dave, because it would have just been me. Lily Christopher, our associate producer, she's also out. So it's just me and Jim Hale, who recorded the show for YouTube and podcast. Our Nabil Khan, our entertainment correspondent, was here today. I'm Ron Klopfenstein. I'll be back next week with another Hot Seat Media Monday.